Good evening. Thank you, Tamara, and school board members, President DeLorme. Thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you for inviting us to celebrate success, for focusing on learning within the classroom. Tonight we are celebrating reading, specifically reading literature. That has been a mainstay in our classroom ever since the beginning of American schools, is the pursuit of learning literature and learning about life through literature. And that has not changed in the 21st century. We are still reading literature, but we are reading it more deeply and more critically. We are taking students beyond key ideas and details, and we are asking them to make meaning by noting something as small as one word. We are asking them to make meaning by examining craft and structure of a text, which is something new to us. And finally, we are asking students to make meaning of literature by integrating their knowledge and their ideas. These are worthy pursuits. And tonight I am excited to share our success within the classroom to give you a tangible picture of what reading literature looks like. And so with us tonight, 4 educators with a wealth of experience, and you are bound to hear their excitement and to celebrate their success as we focus on literature.
Hello, I'm Amanda Peterson and I teach English at BHS. Currently I have freshmen and seniors. And I think the first thing that we have to remember, and when we look at the new North Dakota State Standards, is there's reading for information and then there's reading for literature. And both are something that we still try to accomplish in the classroom, but the literature standards are just in many ways more rigorous than they've ever been before. First and foremost, I'm ELA trained in the language arts, so I'm not a history teacher, I'm not a science teacher. What we're asking those different subject areas to do is to kind of walk alongside us and also be teaching reading. But in the English classroom, we're still very much teaching the classics and things like that. One of the things that with the reading for information standards have done is they've allowed us to bring more nonfiction selections that help us better understand and better critically analyze the literature that we're reading. So when we're still reading poetry and Shakespeare and classic American novels, we're able to then read critical analysis of those novels based on different authors that have written about it, and we're able to make those connections more clear. The standards have increased the rigor and clarity that I've been able to kind of hone in on in the classroom. And personally, I was very excited to see the new standards because they rose the bar, and I think that's what we need to do. I teach seniors, and their next step is the real world, and finding out, what color was the car in chapter 7 doesn't matter anymore, but them being able to make connections between the text and between the real life and the news and just the world around them, and then see how those patterns have continued over time is something I find incredibly important and valuable. We still have classroom and local control, which is really nice. We still, in fact, the list that I'm required to teach is probably what many of you had to read when you were in school. We still read Romeo and Juliet, The Odyssey, To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, Macbeth, Hamlet. All of those pieces are still around, but what we're able to do is we're able to read them more deeply and richer. The language of the state standards is better. It talks about, determining and using text as a resource, and to be able to cite evidence within text to back up your answers and back up your claims. And I think that language allows me to really get those learners to be really critical about what they do. And even in the last couple of years, and this is my 10th year teaching, I always start my year with an independent reading. And this year, and I don't know, this is all just anecdotal evidence, but this year I can't keep my freshmen from not wanting to read. I assigned one book that they had to read over a 3-week period, and they were supposed to read those pieces and do some stuff with them. I had people, before I even assigned it, said they finished their first book, and then they finished their second book, and then they finished their third. And this isn't just one student, one reader in the back of the room. This was, by and large, all of my readers were eating up their books and couldn't get enough. And I think when you hear from Megan, you'll see that is happening in the middle school as well. Thank you.
Yes, so we are seeing more and more readers as they come to middle school. I'm Megan Sharp, and I teach 7th grade English at Simley Middle School. So I started teaching 6 years ago, and we read one novel, and it was Where the Red Fern Grows. This was our basic literature novel, and then we read short stories from our textbook. Now we've switched things because of the standards. It's become more rigorous, and we realize that students want to read more fictional novels. So at Simley, we have book clubs where students choose their novel, and they read these at least four novels a year. Students love it, they're engaged, and we like to see that too. They started doing comprehension packets was what mostly, Amanda talked about, finding out the color of the car, sticking to plot line. And now we're talking, students are talking about, for example, one of the books we have is Divergent, which just became a movie last spring, and it's very popular. Students are talking about, well, what does it really mean to be divergent? And the author doesn't tell you to the end, and so they want me, Mrs. Sharp, could you tell us, please tell us, what does it mean? And I'm like, no, and to have them discover and really figure it out for themselves, and then to have those questions and talk about it, it's really awesome to see that as a teacher, that they can get to that point. The connections that they make between the characters, it's deeper than I've ever seen since I've started teaching. In 6th grade, we have a reading class, and that's across the district. Every school has a class just dedicated to reading. They study genre, and the majority of the genres are literature. Some are the nonfiction texts. And because of this, we started book club in 7th grade because we saw a lack of engagement in reading. And now we do book club because it's good practice. The kids come in and already know all the books that we're reading. They've read most of them. We have to get new ones. They just love reading. And we also feel like that's due to the fact because standards have pushed them to want to read and to just keep on reading, being good readers. And the elementary, we see that more and more each year. The elementary is pushing them to do these things. So I'm going to let the elementary talk about what they're doing.
Hi, I'm Judy Sullivan. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Centennial in Bismarck. And as 4th grade teachers, we've been so excited to see the changes the North Dakota State Standards have brought to reading in our classrooms. We use the standards to drive our instruction. Our curriculum supports those standards, and our students understand what their learning targets are. We talk about it all the time. What are you learning? What's our purpose? Why are we doing this? Through literature, we explore many different reading skills that can only be taught using fictional text, including character, setting, point of view, plot, and theme. We ask students not just to identify these, but to prove it and explain it using the text as a reference. We are learning how to determine importance through main idea and theme. It is challenging, but it is a crucial reasoning skill. We use interactive reading notebooks, and I'm a prop person, so I brought one to show you. This is our reading notebook, and to support all of these reading standards, our characters. So they have character traits, they can look at those. We have setting, so they can determine setting. We always have trouble knowing when and where. They never get both, but it's really helped. We have plot. We have things to help them really put their hands on what they're doing. We use literature read-alouds every day in our classroom to model and teach other standards. This is one of my favorites. As we read, we model connections to the text. We ask deep questions about the story, and we are reading to develop those critical reading skills and thinking skills. We see pride in our students reading. Each student in my classroom has a book box and has it with them throughout the day. Not a day goes by where I don't have to ask a student to put away a book, usually during the wrong subject. They are excited to read, and they're becoming strong, independent readers. We use our reading groups to teach skills, build confidence, and foster a love for reading. Conferring with our students about books of their choice, which are generally fiction, gives us a deeper knowledge of our students, both their abilities and their interests. Readers' theater, partner reading, listening to reading, as well as independent reading allows each of them to develop a love for literature.
Hi, I'm Deb Chasic. I'm an instructional strategist at Sunrise Elementary. It's been my privilege to work in the district for about 18 years in a number of different capacities, so I've had an opportunity to see teachers and children in this process of growth. I have to tell you that of all my years of teaching, I have been most excited about the standards that we are offering to our children today. I really think that we have developed a consciousness in our teachers in integrating reading and writing, that they are really seeing the connection between those two elements of education and really uniting them. We've had an opportunity for them to continue to use classics, as has been previously stated, but to also bring more current literature in for our children to share with. There's been an increase in modeling in classroom behavior, so we're seeing teachers do a lot more focus on thinking aloud, thinking about their own wonderings, helping children to ask questions. Why would an author write that? Are they trying to persuade you about something? Which in the long run we certainly hope will provide them better support in being consumers as they're more discerning in their reading. And I just had to chuckle about the pieces about genre, because today as I was walking through the library, I heard first graders discussing the genre of the books that they were reading. And I want you to know I learned that in college, so it's a different time today, different generations that we're working with, and we have opened a whole new world of exploration for our children, not just in poetries and in fables and fairy tales and dramas and myths, but in exploring how they compare and contrast one to another, which really deepens their thinking. The very sharing of those ideas also whets the appetites of other readers. The reason we have book clubs is you read a book and I come to love that book too, and I want to have that book as well, and that is really prompted through the sharing that our children are doing together. I really believe that the Bismarck standards have really set a solid foundation in both in reading literature and in writing, and it's starting from the ground up. We are seeing more writing in our early elementary pieces than I have ever seen. And I would like to say that one of the teachers that I work with, who was quite sure that children could not possibly write, said to me in November last year, I wouldn't have expected this at the end of the year. And they're writing proficiently and loving literature and wanting to read. So that foundation is only possible when we intentionally and coherently structure to develop rich content knowledge within and across the grade levels. And I really believe we do have that in Bismarck Public Schools. Thank you for letting me share today.